What do you
But,
think of the sound of the new Rocket Girl?
you know, I had to listen to them side by side
I know.
because, I listened to the new version and I went, had I not known this was a remaster? Because again, I think Rocket Girl has aged very well in the first place. So to me, it sounds just a little up to date, but it's earth-shattering.
No,
like,
and that's, that was the hardest thing to decide on, right? Like when we sort of start here, we couldn't find the tapes because we recorded it on 2-inch reel to reel. And of course I lost them in our old school, the studio that we had here. And I finally, after a couple of weeks of searching, I found these 2 boxes under a bunch of other boxes and then sent them to Toronto, and they had to put them in an oven and bake them.
I heard that.
They wouldn't rip apart. So luckily enough, we got it transferred to digital. And then once that happened, then we could start making decisions on what we were going to replace, what we were going to fix. And Dave spent a lot of time listening to it. And we did have to do not the vocal line. The original vocal is the same, but the harmonies were all bounced onto one track for one reason. So there was really no way to remix that. So Dave got Murray in the studio and they redid all the harmonies and he did some acoustics. And then Murray just after playing the song for so many years live, there was a few things he wanted to add in there. I didn't really replace anything. And then with the drums, like we kept the drums original, everything just made them sound better. And, there's 2 ways you could have gone with this. You could have added a whole bunch of synth and made everything sound really giant and big. But I think the simplicity of the song is sort of what the innocence of it is. And if you took that away, then it would take away what made Rocket Girl Rocket Girl. Like if you think of when we recorded it in the studio, we didn't think it was going to be a radio hit because it was so different than everything else that was out on radio at the time. We just loved the song. So we didn't really put a lot of effort into making it radio friendly because we just never assumed it would be on radio. It would be a cool B-side track. So to do that, so when we're remixing it, redoing it, we're like, well, why do what we didn't do in the first place? Like we didn't really try to make it radio in the first place. Why try to do that now? It didn't make any sense. So we just kept it, a lot of it the way it was. But when you do A/B it, then you realize the difference in the sound. Like when I first heard it, when Dave sent it to me, I same as you, I'm like, oh, that just sounds like a better version. Like just sounding a little bit better. But then when you A/B it, boy, you can sure tell the difference.
It's when you describe the idea of Rocket Girl not necessarily being meant to be a radio hit, it reminds me of a conversation I had, and I'm a nut with dates and numbers. It was the 1st of November 2016. Dean Brody was sitting in the studio right here, and he had just put out Time. And he said to me, I wrote this song however long ago. He said, I just kind of put it on the shelf. He said, I thought it was too traditional for radio. Right. And in the end, I had my hands on my head going, if we ever end up at radio in an environment where there's not a home for a song like Time, or there's not a home for a song like Rocket Girl, I want off the train.
Yeah. I think with us, the one reason we kind of lucked out was CMT really loved the song. And Ron was talking to them about the next video. And they were like, well, we really love Rocket Girl. We think that we could do a pretty neat video with it. And we're like, well, I wonder if radio is going to get on board with it. And so we sent some feelers out. And just before we released Rocket Girl, Train had released Drops of Jupiter. And it was racing up the charts. And in a way, Rocket Girl had the same kind of vibe and feel as Drops of Jupiter. So we thought, hey, I mean, if it's working for them. So that's sort of how Rocket Girl came out. And then, this is back in the day of when fan mail actually came in the mail, not an email. And I remember we got a bunch of letters from around Toronto because that was sort of the first place it was played. And some of the letters we got, that how it connected with people, and it just, took them through some pretty crappy times, or just made them feel that there's something better out there, because it's a real dreamy kind of song where it kind of makes you feel like that anything's possible in life, and you can go anywhere or do anything. That's when it started making sense that we had something pretty special there.
I think you just answered the question that was rattling around in my head. Here we are 20 years later. And again, had you guys not found those tapes, baked them, which is crazy, and brought that song to life a second time, the song still stands up as an amazing song. What is it? And again, maybe you just answered it, that makes Rocket Girl so special.
Well, I think that's what it is sort of no limitations, like here, where are we going to do Rocket Girl? Like fly me around this world. It's not just Alberta or BC or Nashville. It's like, it's really kind of worldly. And I think the mysterious, like I still don't even know what the song's about. It's been 20 years of me singing it. You even asked McCoy who wrote it. He's like, I don't know. He wrote a song about a girl who's just kind of wants to go anywhere. And, she might be a little bit on the crazy side, but he was, my life's boring. So fly me around this world, and so it's just a conversation between two people, maybe one who's lonely and has nowhere to go, and the other person who basically just says there's no limits, let's just go anywhere. So I think that kind of romance to it, whether you're a male, female, it doesn't matter. It just kind of lets you go away to a different place.
I saw a social media post from you guys, from Doc Walker, inside of the last week, and the question was asked to your fans, what's your favorite Doc Walker lyric?
Yeah.
We scroll mindlessly on our phones or on our computers, and I came across that post and I actually stopped and I went, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of the lyrics in a lot of your songs, whether again, in this case, McCoy had his fingerprints on Rocket Girl, whatever, you guys have, made so many songs that are so lyrically deep. I thought, that's a tough question to answer, and I'm going to flip it around to you in a second. But what was fun was scrolling through people's comments and their answers.
Yeah.
As what their favorite Doc Walker lyric is. What do you think is? And I know it'd be hard for you to pigeonhole it to one. What are some of your favorite Doc Walker lyrics?
Well, I think pretty much all of that train is lyrically. That song I think is pretty deep and has a lot of meat in the bones in it. But I think lyrically, the record we had, Go, had a song on it called Go. And the last line of the chorus there, I tell you to stay, but I'm going to say the one word you need here most, go. And the reason I love that, because it's such a beautiful line. And I'll never forget the day Dave wrote it. We were in an apartment in Nashville, and I was sitting having a drink out on the little patio thing that we had over the pool. And it was about 8 o'clock at night. We've been trying to finish this song, and there was just, I didn't think there was any rhyme at all. I'm like, okay, well, we backed ourselves into a corner. There's no way that we're going to come up with an impactful line that rhymes with go. And anyway, so I just heard, okay, just picture, when you come home and your dog, your lab or whatever, comes running out of the bedroom and slides in the hallway and then slides in the kitchen just because he wants to see us so bad. That was Dave running out of the bedroom to come and tell me this line that he just come up with. I just heard to hit a chair in the kitchen and just about fell over the couch. And then he comes, and I think he may have been having a few beers in his room too. But anyway, he came and he says, I want to tell you to stay, but I'm going to say the one word you need to hear most, go. And I'm like, wow. And then you put it in the context with the whole song. For me, I think singing that live just acoustically with Murray and Dave, people really got, how special that song is too. So there's a lot of different Doc Walker songs with, Beautiful Life has a lot of really nice lyrics in it. But
if I live to be 100 and given my dietary habits, I won't. Beautiful Life will be a beautiful song forever. And that's, I think really some of the magic that comes along with Doc Walker, these songs that can stand the test of time. So let me take that question one step further. What's the best Doc Walker song that I've never heard?
That you've never heard? I don't know if you've heard it, but there's a song on, which record is it? It's called Just Fine. I think it's on the, it's on the Weather Vane record.
Cool.
You got to check it out. it's you know, and it's funny because we wrote that song in Nashville, and it has a bit of a Tom Waits kind of feel to it. But it's funny how inspiration in a song can come from such an odd place. We'd found a record player there and a big stereo system in this little bar writing room that we had set up on an old farm, and we had Hot for Teacher just cranked.
Nice.
And for some reason, we finished listening to it, and then Dave strums a few lyrics, a few chords, and we end up writing this slow, very lyrically driven song right after we listened to Hot for Teachers. So it's, you know, when people go, so how do you get yourself an inspiration for songs like this? I'm like, it's all over the map. You never know.
Yeah, you know, I've asked artists for years. I've probably asked you guys before the same thing. Like, what portion of your brain do you have to crack into to get into songwriting mode? I don't think there's an answer to that.
No, there's not. It's just, I think really as far as songwriting goes, you have to be ready at all times and open to everything. Like when you're watching TV or listening to a conversation or anything, like a line will fall out of the sky, but you just have to be prepared for it.
Yeah, you know, and technology, I think, has really helped us along where we're all carrying mini computers in our hand. You know, we can record a voice note anytime or, you know, make a thought on a lyric. And so I think that's helped because, you know, if creativity strikes when you're driving across a highway somewhere, you know, now it's Hey Siri rather than having to pull over and hope that the line's there. Yeah,
no, for sure. And, you know, like I said, I think it's just being observant to what's around you sort of emotionally too. You know, when you hear somebody talking about a situation that they've been in, I mean, it's horrible. I'm the guy, I'm like Dewey Cox. I'm sitting there writing a song as you're talking to me, you know. But you better not be writing a song, Dewey. But
yeah, it's
you
funny.
know, if somebody's talking, I'll be like in my head, I'll be like, is this a good song? You know, so it's horrible.
Well, it makes it hard, I would guess. And I've heard Jerry Seinfeld say something similar through a comedy lens where you're never really present in any moment. You're always kind of detached a little. And in Seinfeld's case, he's always looking for the bit in life. You know, he's looking for the humor. You know, I suppose from a songwriting standpoint, it could be somewhat the same. Yeah, you're in the moment, but on the other hand, you're also listening through the lens of a songwriter.
Oh yeah, and then when you hear a line or something like that, you're off on cloud nine. You might as well just get out of the conversation.
Like Dave running around like the dog with that.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of my favorite moments in songwriting because I wondered if there was a fire in the room or something. I don't know. And then I was like, wow, but he's that kind of guy, you know, like he's a thinker. I'm a story guy. I talk all the time and he sits and listens and writes down stuff.
Well, what a recipe, because Doc Walker, you know, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Rocket Girl and the new version of that, which again, baked tapes. Oh, by the way, back to that. You said earlier that those tapes were lost.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, is there anything else on those tapes that you thought was gone?
Well, it was pretty much the whole record. It was all of Curve with She Hasn't Always Been This Way and whoever made those rules. So it was good that I found them. And you know, the funny thing is I don't heat that school in the winter. So for the last 20 years, they've gone from probably plus 35 to minus 35. You know, like those tapes are supposed to be in a temperature, humidity controlled room, and they made it so that they're as tough as we are anyway.
Well, I'm glad they did. Now, Doc Walker's on the road this fall too. George Canyon, Sawyer Brown. I don't see any Ontario dates, and I'm hoping that I just haven't scrolled down far enough.
No, we already talked about that, and I know that we want to do another leg of it because to get all four acts sort of, because it was supposed to be last spring we were supposed to do this tour, but with COVID, I think it was May we were supposed to do it, but then COVID came back and things shut down again. So we thought, let's just push it till November. But then, you know, they had other gigs that they were doing too. So we really only had a couple weeks window, but I know with the ticket sales that have been going on through the Western Canada, I know Mark from Sawyer Brown was really impressed with, you know, the amount of tickets that have been selling in these markets. But you got to remember, they haven't toured in Canada in years. And to be able to see you know, Lone Star, Sawyer Brown, George Canyon, Doc Walker all on one stage. There's so many hits. Like you think, and you know, if you think of Sawyer Brown, the songs we used to play live, like The Race Is On and stuff. Sure, yeah, we had to play that song 3 times a night because everybody loved it. But if you think of some of their other songs like Cafe on the Corner or The Dirt Road, there's so many great songs. And then Lone Star, the list goes on and on. So I think it's just going to be a pretty amazing night. And mostly people within our age too, that, you know, that I'm a huge fan of Dallas Smith and all everybody that's coming out now. But I mean, honestly, I would rather go watch Diamond Rio and Brooks and Dunn because I want to feel the way I did when I was 22, you know? So for people like my age and older, I know my sister, she's 5 years older than me. They're just turning 50. I mean, they're crazy. I can't keep up with them when I go visit them out at the lake. And I can't imagine what it's going to be like in Saskatoon when they all go. I think there's 30 of them going, but they're so excited because, you know, I think the last time my sister went to a concert like that was back with Alan Jackson and Diamond Rio in Winnipeg. And so it's bringing all these memories back. And I think people are really, really excited.
Well, they should be. And here in Ontario, we're certainly envious, to say the least. And man, I'd love to see that show, those 4 bands, just to get lost in the music for that night.
I would love to come out. And I know I was talking to Nick and Todd, the 2 agents, and they're like, if we could, we would just keep going. But unfortunately, Sawyer Brown and Lone Star had shows booked already, so they can't cancel them. But I think it was sort of an experiment to see how it went and then see if we can carry it on. And I think by the look of the, you know, ticket sales and the excitement out west, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of places in around Toronto we could do a couple weeks touring around there.
Well, I'll be there when you do.
Sounds good.
As long as you play Rocket Girl, you're not going to leave that off the set, are you?
We can't. Not now.
I always love that when people in the crowd are shouting out the biggest hits, like the band wasn't going to play.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for this. Congrats. I'm so glad. I mean, it's such a bizarre story that those tapes survived those conditions for all those years. You know,
I know it's you know, one of my favorite movies growing up was Eddie and the Cruisers. And back, you know, when you had those lost Eddie and the Cruisers tapes, it was almost like that story where, you know, it wasn't hidden in an old car in the bush in a graveyard, but it was in an old school in Westburn where I thought they were in Toronto. So I called Deception Studios and they said, no, we sent them to Alberta where their manager, or no, first it was Toronto where the manager was. And then he sent them somewhere else. And then she sent them to me and I forgot. And I just put them in the school. So yeah, I did the mad dash and looked for them and found them. But so that was pretty nerve wracking those 2 weeks because they're nowhere else. Like if they hadn't have survived, that would have been it. We wouldn't have been able to ever remix or remaster anything.
Unbelievable. Hey, take care of the rest of them from here on out, will you?
I will for sure.
That, by the way, Eddie and the Cruisers you mentioned, I know you got places to be. John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, you know, which hosts the soundtrack to those Eddie and the Cruisers movies. The soundtracks are unbelievable.
Oh, I mean, I would say as an artist, some of my biggest influence has been Eddie and the Cruisers because, you know, I always loved Bruce Springsteen, but when Dave and I do a lot of writing together, he's like, it's really weird how you have like a lot of Jersey influence, like that Bruce Springsteen, Jersey Shore kind of. And then we were talking, he's like, it's probably because you grew up listening to Eddie and the Cruisers. It's a very, very New York, Jersey kind of thing. And it's funny how when we're going in different directions in songs, that for me, that always comes out. And Dave was always he was like, how does somebody from Westburn, Manitoba have this influence of Jersey, you know? So, and I just got to say, it's probably Eddie and the Cruisers.
Man, I'm not even 100% sure now that I think about it that I saw Eddie and the Cruisers. I remember watching Eddie and the Cruisers Part 2 over and over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, the first one's the best.
I got to go find it.
Yeah.
It's been so many years, it'd be like a new movie for me. Listen.
No, exactly.
Yeah, I could bend your ear all day. Again, congrats on 20 years of Rocket Girl. What a gift you guys have given to country music fans by making the song in the first place and then bringing it to life with this remastered version. Well done.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on.